It's 1976, and Apocalypse Now is filming in the Philippines. Martin Sheen wears a Seiko 6105, which later becomes famous. Marlon Brando wears an even more famous watch, the Rolex GMT Master, but on a black strap and without the iconic bezel. The original just sold at auction 3 weeks ago for $5.1 million. I will take a knife to my pre-modern Rolex Pepsi GMT Master 2 and attempt to recreate the look of the Marlon Brando GMT. Apocalypse Now was released in 1979 and fairly well received, but the filming was plagued with problems, from tropical storms destroying some of the movie sets, to the star Martin Sheen suffering a nervous breakdown and a heart attack, to Marlon Brando arriving late on set, overweight, and totally unprepared for the role. But Brando's choice of wearing his own personal Rolex threatened a showdown between him and director Francis Ford Coppola. The story is loosely based on Heart of Darkness, which I recommend reading, but in this version, Colonel Kurtz is the commander of an army unit during the Vietnam War. The army learns he's gone rogue in Cambodia and operating a brutal guerrilla war without permission or instructions. They recruit a burnt out army officer, Captain Willard, to go after him. His orders are handed to him by Harrison Ford, and they are to terminate the colonel's command with extreme prejudice. Captain Willard wears his Seiko and hitches a ride on a Navy brownwater boat, crewed by a group of misfits, up the river to find Colonel Kurtz. Along the way, he meets a variety of characters and experiences, including Robert Duvall, playing the commander of an Army cavalry unit, who has a passion for surfing in a war zone. Eventually, Captain Willard finds the colonel in the final act of the movie, but he is captured and his crew are killed by Colonel Kurtz's guerrillas. Willard ultimately completes his mission and starts his way back to civilization. We only see the watch briefly towards the end of the movie, but it's been documented with several still photos. This is the Rolex GMT Master, reference 1675 from 1972. Marlon Brando chose to wear his own personal Rolex, but this didn't please director Francis Ford Coppola very much. He felt it was out of place in the jungle and asked him to remove it. So Brando removed the bezel and attached it to a black strap. He also hand scratched his name on the back of the case. In 1995, Brando passed on this watch to his adopted daughter Petra. Long after Brando's death in 2004, in 2019, this original watch was put up for auction and sold for $1.95 million. The original bezel has long been lost, but the case is claimed to be unpolished. And just 3 weeks ago, on November 6, 2023, it sold again at auction for more than double the price. It sold for over $5 million to a mystery buyer. I'm starting with my GMT Master 2 16710 from 2006. It's in good condition, but has a faulty bezel that's very stiff to turn. For its age, the bracelet is still in very good condition and does not have that much stretch. I had this serviced at Rolex 2 years ago, and the movement is working just fine, but they weren't able to make the bezel turn any easier. To simulate Marlon Brando's GMT from Apocalypse Now, all I need to do is pry off the bezel and change the bracelet to a black strap. To remove the bezel, I'm using the pry bar tool from my pocket knife. I used 2 layers of masking tape on the lug, but I still managed to scratch the lug and the end link while I was removing the bezel. After removing the bezel, you need to be careful not to lose any of the parts, including a flat washer, and there's a very tiny spring that catches onto the bezel. It's also good to give everything a good cleaning at this point. Mine looked fairly clean inside, but it did have a sticky residue left over inside, and this easily washed out. The auction watch came on a black rubber strap, but I decided to try this black textured leather strap from Amazon. If I like the look, I might go ahead and order a custom strap sized to my wrist. And here's the final result. It's just an approximation and doesn't look as cool as the original. It's a GMT Master 2 and not a GMT Master, and the dial has none of that lovely patina of the older GMT Master. But just removing the bezel and the bracelet does totally transform the look of this watch. Instead of a pilot's watch, it's now an Army field watch, more discreet and more tactical. And here Marlon Brando wears it on the underside of his wrist to reduce the chance of reflections in the jungle. It now almost looks like an Explorer 2, but even cleaner and no markings on the bezel. The black leather strap and no bezel makes it look different than any of my other Rolex. I can use this as a beater watch and get it repolished as needed. Let me know in the comments what you think about the Marlon Brando GMT.